With relics finally arriving in Guild Wars 2, a lot of old builds, such as Condi Berserker, are back with a brand new fresh coat of paint thanks to relics such as the Relic of Akeem. This relic right here is insane for this build and is what enables it to be one of the best builds in PvP and World v World roaming at the moment. This relic right here will basically grant you an extra 5 stacks of confusion on your opponent when you use your Mace 1 burst skill while you're in Berserker stance. This is a Condi build that actually plays somewhat like a power build where you're just dealing so much burst damage as opposed to slowly ticking down with Condis. This confusion just all pops at once and your other Condis are there to just kind of finish off the job from that initial burst of confusion. It really is a super strong build considering that we run the defense trait line on Warrior, meaning that our mace blocks and our sword blocks as well on the offhand really just like make this build super survivable, as well as the new traits on Berserker that came out a few patches ago, meaning that while you're in Berserker stance, like as soon as you get into it, you can't take damage. Blood Reckoning's on, and then as soon as you leave it, you also cannot take damage. And by that time, all your block cooldowns are reset, you're back up, you're applying all these conditions. You run Longbow on the back bar and you can just immobilize and apply fire on the enemies. There's just so many Condis going out all while you're stacking up confusion and just tanking so much damage from your trait lines and weapon skills. And those are the main two things that really just make this build so oppressive. It's the fact that you're applying 10 stacks of confusion and all these other Condis that it's just really hard for your opponent to handle and deal with these unless they have so many Condi cleanses. They pretty much can't use skills unless they want to take a huge chunk of damage. And on top of this, if they even try, you're just blocking and healing anyways, so it really just doesn't matter. This build honestly is super overpowered at the moment. It is one of the best duelists. It can 2v1. It's just insane how much value that a build like this gets out of one new relic because of that 10 stacks of confusion, the burning, all the bleeding, poison on your sigil. You're just able to apply so much in just like 2 buttons, 1 button. It really just is a super easy build that is very effective. So although I'm showcasing this build in PvP, it does work in roaming as well. All you have to do is run a mixture of Rabid and Dire stats and you're pretty much set. As long as you have the Relic of Akeem and the Rune of the Trapper, or if you don't have Rune of the Trapper, you can also run the Rune of Balthazar as well. Both are really great Condi damage options for you. And of course, if you're playing this in PvP, you don't need to worry about any of that. You just put on Trapper Rune, Rabid Amulet, and Akeem Relic, and you are just set and ready to blast. Here are the traits right here on the screen. I think the most important one to note is the Defense tree and the Berserker tree. Defense allows you to reflect a bunch of projectiles and get bonuses when you block or take damage, which is all pretty passive stuff that happens. On the Berserker tree, every time that you leave Berserker stance or enter Berserker stance, you'll be gaining bonuses such as breaking stun and being immune to any type of damage, or healing back from all your attacks for a few seconds. A quick thing to note is that a lot of our traits and skills contribute to the amount of adrenaline that we are gaining, meaning that we are going to be constantly having a supply of adrenaline to be dealing out all those mace bursts and the longbow bursts on the back bar. As you can see, our skills actually have quite a few useful tools. We have the healing skill, which just heals and clears Condis. We have the Berserker leap skill, which acts as a gap closer, breaks out of roots, extends our berserk duration, and grants us adrenaline, which is a pretty big one. So this is just a nice skill to use if you need a gap close and generate some adrenaline to get into your berserker stance faster. We also take the Shattering Blow skill, which will summon a rock that blocks attacks, so that is the synergy with our defense trait line, as well as apply Condi such as bleeding and grant us stability, as well as adrenaline and increasing berserk duration. A lot of stuff on this one skill. Very nice. I pretty much press this off cooldown, or if I know that an attack's coming and I need to block it, that's pretty much what I do, and you get a lot of good value out of this one skill. The elite skill will just passively generate adrenaline for us, so that's always nice too. The way that you want to look to play this build is to try and build up as much adrenaline as you can while blocking attacks with your mace and offhand sword. Then immediately go into Berserker stance as soon as possible and get your mace burst going. The sooner that you can land a few mace burst skills on the opponent, the sooner that you are going to win the fight. For my rotation, to get the most out of my Berserker stance, I usually try and go for a mace burst, and then while that's on cooldown, I weapon swap over to longbow and use the longbow burst. If that's not ready yet, I go ahead and pop a longbow 5 into a longbow 2 to apply bleeding, immobilize, and burning. And then I go ahead and use my longbow 1. I then swap over to mace, and depending on if my adrenaline is full yet, I either go for a block or an offhand sword hit into another mace burst. If any of these land, it's basically a guaranteed nice chunk of damage that can be cleansed off, but then the rest of the condies you apply from longbow are just there to help finish the job and get it done faster. While I'm waiting for Berserker stance to come back up, I just go ahead and use my plethora of block abilities, and I cycle through them as well as dodge while I'm waiting for them to come back up. So you can use your mace 2, sword 5, or shattering blow, plus your dodges, and by then you should be doing some off damage as well as getting healing back and damage reduction from your traits, enough to get you back into Berserker stance and spamming out those mace bursts and longbow bursts. One thing I will say is to not underestimate the damage of longbow 5 into longbow 2. This bleed and burning combo actually does a really nice chunk of damage that will net you a ton of kills and help you finish off opponents that just keep on dodging your mace combos. Now that you know how to play the build and how it works, you are ready to go out there and terrorize any 1v1 or 1vx encounter in PvP and World v World. Hopefully ArenaNet takes action on this build soon, because honestly all the fights I've had against this have not been fun at all. I have not enjoyed playing against this, especially because I main a Revenant and Condi Cleanse isn't really my thing. So yeah, this build has been oppressive for me, and I know it's been oppressive for others. It is currently like top of the S tier, one of the most broken builds at the moment. So hopefully it gets a bit of a tweak in the future, but for now, enjoy it, abuse it, and just, yeah, do what you gotta do. If this video helped you, please consider leaving a like and a sub, as it helps me out a ton. Let me know down below if you enjoy this build and if you've been playing it at all, and what are your overall thoughts on this build? What are your overall thoughts on new relics changing up and making older builds more viable and even broken? Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.